Skill-based matchmaking. One may say that it was a topic that was first debated through the sacred texts. It has truly stood the test of time. And like any old content creator on this platform who is playing Call of Duty, you can bet that I have some thoughts on how the current skill-based matchmaking arrangements are affecting the gameplay. Strap in, gang, this is going to be a good one. G'day there once again, viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today, let's talk skill-based matchmaking and the double-edged sword that this technology brings to the Call of Duty franchise. So let's just start off the video by getting this out of the way nice and quickly here, because I see this as a common misconception within the community. Skill-based matchmaking as a concept is nothing new. Games have been adopting performance-based matchmaking technologies since as long as I can remember. Halo, the older Call of Duty games, these were all games that I grew up on where matchmaking or performance-based matchmaking was very much the norm there. Now, mind you, I was a lot worse at gaming back then, so the performance-based matchmaking may have impacted me a little less, but it's still worth pointing out. The technologies in these older games were still skill-based matchmaking technologies to a certain extent. The wiggle room for error, however, in which how these, technologies matched you up against other players was much greater. The tech over the years has gotten a lot more mature, it's gotten a lot better, and as a result, it's become far more aggressive for pitting players of equal skills against one another. And I use the word more aggressive when I really should use the word more accurate, because that's the way it's working. Statistically speaking, skill-based matchmaking has gotten more accurate. The wiggle room for error that the algorithm of skill-based matchmaking has to work with has been significantly pinched, which is where we are today. Now, my understanding of skill-based matchmaking in COD currently is that it aims to link players of similar KD ratios together with the intent of keeping the game competitive. Avoiding situations where players of statistically different skill levels, at least highly differentiating skill levels, meet. If you're a particularly skilled player, the first time you load up a game of COD MW2, or any COD game for that matter, your first match is going to be an absolute stomp, because it's most likely going to be you getting pitted with a bunch of newer players who have lower end stats and match up with your player profile. Quite frankly, you're going to feel like a weapon of mass destruction that just broke the Geneva Convention, and it feels good. But then, as you keep playing, the lobbies continue to get sweatier, they get tougher, and man oh man do you feel it. That's the current skill-based matchmaking doing its thing, and it is far from subtle nowadays. It's clear that this game does everything it can humanly possible to make sure that you perform at a consistent 1.0 KD average. And look, quite frankly guys, that's the skill-based matchmaking doing its job statistically. If you were to pit two players of equal skill consistently against one another, then the KD between those two players would, statistically, average out at 1.0. Two players of exact equal skill are going to die and kill each other statistically the same amount of times. So, the reason we're seeing lobbies 24/7 in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 with average 1.0 KDs is because skill-based matchmaking is working as intended. And look, if the main goal was to create a system that allowed you to keep your games completely even from a player's skill level 24/7, then congratulations, what you've actually done here is created the perfect ranked playlist where you've got a highly intelligent algorithm pitting players against one another for the perfect competitive stage where matches are going to be down to the wire 24/7. But the problem with that is that these lobbies that we are playing in Call of Duty right now aren't competitive lobbies. We aren't fighting for a front-facing ranking system that is indicative of player skill. We aren't fighting in a tournament environment. We're playing some quick play on Call of Duty. It turns every game into a slugfest that never allows you to have those games of yesteryear, right? It's superbly rare to see players go on incredible streaks or pop off with something amazing in the game, because skill-based matchmaking does a brutal job at making the lobbies even. If you look at the scoreboards of most matches that you play, everyone will most likely be hovering around a 0.8 to 1.2 KD. It mathematically assumes that everyone is set to always stick around that KD. Once again, removing the possibility for those games to exist, those opportunities for stellar triumph where you go on those 70 and 5s, those 40 and 4s, whatever the case may be. The room for those games to occur has practically faded away. And to make myself clear here, because I know that this is going to come up in the comment section down below, I'm not saying that those moments for triumph need to happen by pairing up some full-time streamer sweat that hasn't seen natural sunlight in years with little Jimmy who just got the game for Christmas and can't even manipulate aim assist to his benefit. That's not what I want to see here. Sure, it's nice to have that opportunity to pop off and get that stellar game, but doing it against players who are hip firing at 30 meters isn't a challenge nor rewarding. The skill differentiation in these lobbies shouldn't be that far. And I want to make it clear that I do think that skill-based matchmaking has a role to play in ensuring that newer players are protected from giga sweats, and I think that's important. No one wins in those situations at all. It's not challenging, and it's not enjoyable for anyone. However, to reminisce a bit, I remember the old days of COD where it wasn't uncommon to see someone really popping off. It was cool to see people of higher skill getting some success in the lobbies. It gave players a goal to strive for, a goal, an example, if you will, of what is possible in the game. And those expressions of skill, or at least the room for those expressions of skill, are worth cherishing. This was possible thanks to previous games' skill-based matchmaking, allowing for a slightly larger variety of players to make their way into matches together. What was on offer was a wider variety of experiences in the match, no matter what level of skill you were at, which meant that you always had the room to play a little bit more casually if you felt like just winding down after a long day at work, but if you wanted to sweat and go against some of the better players that were in your lobby, you also had the challenge present to do that as well. Whereas now, if you want to, work at becoming better at COD, it kind of feels like you're just grinding your head against a wall with nothing to show for it. You feel like you're getting better, but your KD remains the same for every game you play. This is once again the byproduct of the SBMM's wiggle room tightening up and manufacturing just robotic gameplay experiences. It's also worth pointing out right now that playing with mates is such a chore if one of your mates is a more casual player than the rest, or you're the more high-skilled player in your group of friends. They get dragged into higher skilled lobbies because that's how the skill-based matchmaking system works and get dumpstered. They aren't going to have fun. Once again, the system assumes that it operates within a ranked playlist, where everyone is always going to be of that equal skill in that lobby, and they are all planning on playing at the understood skill level that comes from something like a front-facing ranking system. If I was to ever queue into a diamond lobby for Apex Legends, which let's be real would never happen because I'm not that good at the game, but the point being, if I was to ever queue into a lobby like that, there would be a level of understanding from me as a player as to how I should be performing. In Call of Duty, because there's no, front-facing ranking system, that's not the case here. And lastly, and this is probably the biggest first world problem I will ever have here, and I'll definitely get some fingers pointing in my direction for it, but damn it, sometimes I don't want to feel like I'm sweating for a grand prize every match I play. Sometimes I just want to relax and play a little bit more casually. And SBMM doesn't really allow for that to happen. So despite a laundry list of complaints that I just had there, I acknowledge that skill-based matchmaking to a certain extent is a welcome addition to the game. And I didn't come here just to complain today. What is the solution to skill-based matchmaking in its current form? Is there even one, or is this our Terminator Skynet moment where in an attempt to develop something so efficient, we've killed ourselves and the gameplay experience really in the process? There are a few ways we could go here, based on my sort of first thoughts. 1. Abolish skill-based matchmaking entirely. Go back to a totally random matchmaking system that is entirely dependent on geographical location, and well, which players are queuing up for a game in your area the same time you are. To be clear, ping should always be king, but I'm talking more about a scenario where little Timmy with no thumbs is running into FaZe Clan Sniper XX in a same game. Personally, I think this is the wrong way to go. Sure, it appeases to the mega sweats as it gives people most amount of opportunity to frag out with zero competition, but this is the opposite end of the extreme and one that I don't think we need to entertain. Some degree of matchmaking or skill-based matchmaking is a healthy way to treat your game and your community and ensures that the game remains at least somewhat competitive even in the casual environment. So that's a good way to go. Secondly, we create a public-facing MMR system that demonstrates rank and how you are scoring in the skill-based matchmaking system currently in the game with how you're playing. This idea does a lot to show players where they stand in relation to their opponents and tells them what to expect from the games they're getting into. It also tells the players exactly how their previous games have affected their performance ratings for future games. The issue with this though is that, all the problems that I listed above still remain, playing casual, playing with friends, stuff like that. I've heard ideas for separate playlists, that being a ranked playlist and a casual playlist being thrown around a bit, but let's be 100% honest with ourselves here, guys. That ranked playlist is just going to be a, cobweb central because no one's going to want to play it. They're all going to want to get their easy farm on in a skill-based matchmaking-less environment. Which leads me to my third and final suggestion here today, the solution that I think is actually worth chasing, and I actually think it's probably the simplest of the bunch. Just loosen up the skill-based matchmaking a little bit. Take that good old Phillips head screwdriver and instead of going righty-tighty, go lefty-loosey a little bit. Let's revert back to a less stringent skill-based matchmaking procedure that we know from, say, previous games. In chasing perfection when it comes to skill-based matchmaking, I think we've forgotten what good feels like. And that is what's happening here in my opinion. When you chase too hard for that perfection, sometimes you lose the human element, the character, the moment-to-moment variation that makes what we do worth doing. If everything that we did in life was perfect, then, life would be boring. And that's exactly what's happening with Call of Duty right now. The Call of Duty matchmaking system is trying to treat the game as though everything should be perfect. And the lack of perfection that came from the skill-based matchmaking in previous titles, and I'm talking, again, older generation Call of Duty titles, it provided a more human experience. It provided a more natural gameplay flow. I don't think that gamers need to be necessarily handheld throughout their entire gaming experience. In doing so, the experience becomes artificial. There's no curve of improvement, at least a visible curve of improvement. There's no margin for error. There's nothing that makes the gameplay experience human. And I feel like that's what we're missing out on here. As I said before, skill-based matchmaking in its current form does its job. It makes sure that every single game you play is 100% fair. And while I think there is something to be said for that, in a positive light, I think there's a point where we've gone too far, especially when it comes to, jumping on with the boys late at night to play some Call of Duty. Loosening up the impact that skill-based matchmaking has while keeping skill-based matchmaking in the game to a certain extent, I think will provide a much cleaner and more enjoyable Call of Duty experience in the long run. But I want to hear your thoughts down below, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are in skill-based matchmaking and its current predicament in Call of Duty right now. Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's warranted? Or is it driving you out of the game completely? Enjoyed the video? Leave a like down below. It does go a long way to supporting the channel. And if you're new here, consider subscribing while you're at it because we've got a lot of Modern Warfare 2 content coming to the channel in the near future. And we'll also be covering Warzone as well. So get subscribed for all that, guys. And as always, social media links are linked in the description down below. Once again, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.